Hello, everyone, and good evening. It is Thursday, April 8th. I had to check the date. It is Coach Sarah, and welcome to the VIP coaching group. We are in our first week of our 30-day Big Five Accountability Challenge. And tonight, we are going to talk about a topic that is probably the number one reason that you will get derailed from anything that you try to do with your health, your wellness. I mean, let's face it, your finances, your relationships, any goals that you have for yourself, this one thing is sure to derail you, and it is your excuses. So tonight we're going to talk about excuses. We're going to talk about the limiting beliefs surrounding our excuses. And I am going to give you some practical application of how you can work on tackling your limiting beliefs. So I've been talking about excuses this week in the group and how those excuses are keeping you stuck in getting to where you want to go with your goals. Because we have to face it, we're only going to be able to get as far as our excuses are going to allow us. Because what we believe, if we believe those excuses that we're saying, right? If we believe it and we're saying it, we're going to be constantly looking for evidence in the world around us that those things are true. Because there's a part of our brain, it's called the reticular activating system, that is set up to seek out truth or reaffirmations or examples in your environment of the things that you speak into existence. So if you have a limiting belief, or if you have an excuse of, I don't have time, you are constantly going to be looking for evidence of that in your environment. You're going to be looking for affirmations or confirmations that that is true. It's a confirmation bias in your brain. It's physiology. And we unfortunately have no control over what after we have spoken it out, we're going to start looking for evidence of it. We don't have control over that process, but we do have control over what comes out of our mouth. So what we want to think about is what's coming out of our mouth as an excuse, what's coming out of our mouth as a limiting belief. So a lot of what we have as limiting beliefs and excuses, we have to also recognize are not things that we're making up in the moment. A lot of it is they're deeply rooted beliefs that may have been formed even from things in your family of origin, like things that your mom said about fitness or nutrition, or things that your sister or brother said about fitness or nutrition, or things that you learned about fitness or nutrition when you were younger from mainstream media. There's a lot of places where we get shaped and molded throughout our life that can develop those limiting beliefs or those narratives. And the times that those narratives are really going to rear their ugly head the most is going to be in the moments when we are experiencing stress, when we're experiencing anxiousness, when we are under pressure. That's when those limiting beliefs and those excuses really start to pop up. And you probably have your own list of things. Think about it. When you start to get stressed, or when you start to get under the wire, or when you start to have your to-do list get longer and deeper and bigger, what are the common excuses that start coming up for you? I don't have time. That's too hard. That's not going to fit in my day. I need to get this, and this done, and I don't have time for that. We have a go-to list of excuses. And like I was saying before, it doesn't mean that it's not true what you're saying, in essence of, is your schedule full? Yes. May your time be more limited than normal? Yes. But do you truly not have the time to get active? Do you truly not have the time to get yourself in bed on time? Do you truly not have the time or energy to get some vegetables in your diet today? Because oftentimes we're using those autopiloted excuses that are very good excuses. They're plausible excuses, right? They're not like my dog ate my homework. They're I'm a busy mom who is stressed out and I have X, Y, and Z to do. And I mean, they're all good excuses. I have a hip that's in pain. That's a good excuse, but still an excuse when we break it down to the brass tacks. Because if I used a hurt body part as another example of a very good excuse and say, well, I have a hurt leg. I can't get my 30 minutes of movement in. Well, you have 2 arms and a torso. So we figure out a way around it. And we do movement in our chair. So it's figuring out a solution to the problem that sits in the gray space. Because when we get anxious or when we're under pressure or when we're not feeling our best, we do have a tendency to think very black and white. We have a tendency to go either all in and be on with our habits, or we have a tendency to go all out and turn that switch off. I am here to challenge you today to instead look at every habit as having 50 shades of gray. And I've spoken to this before. There's not a perfect way to tackle the big 5, but there's a way that's going to work for you right now to bridge the gap between where you're at and where you want to be. And too many of us are so scared of failing at achieving that ideal that we use our excuses to allow us to stay stuck. Because at the end of the day, our fear of not being able to attain the ideal or to achieve the expectation or to hit the goal is what's preventing us from trying in the first place. And I understand that. I'm not here like standing on my pedestal like I'm so great. I don't ever have problems. Because I am human too. And I struggle with the same thing. So you have to ask yourself, just like I have to ask myself, what excuses have I allowed myself to lean into to allow my wheels to continue to spin? And for each of us, the answer to that is different. Because for each of us, that excuse looks a little different. Because we're all in a different season. Right now, my biggest excuse is time. But I'm not making it. So this week, my goal is making that time for movement, no matter what it looks like. And so far, I've been successful. Because I haven't put myself in a box of it having to look a certain way. So I challenge you, each of you, to think about your list of excuses. And I want you to start writing them down. Create that list. And then next to each one of your excuses, I'm too tired. I have pain. I don't have time. Just, go down the list, whatever they are. And I don't care how good of an excuse it is. What is the truth behind that excuse? And I'll use the excuse of time again. Let's double back to that. I don't have time. Well, what are you expecting yourself to do that makes you feel like you don't have time? And if it's because you don't feel like you can knock out a 1-hour workout, can you knock out 30 minutes? Can you go walk? Can you do something? Can you get 15 minutes? Because I'll tell you what, 15 minutes is better than 0. 5 minutes is better than 0. So it's all about taking a step towards where you want to be without allowing the fear of failure to cut you off before you even make an attempt. Because let's face it, it's probably not going to look perfect when you get started. It's probably not going to look exactly the way that you expect it to at first. And that's okay. That is okay. It's about showing up. Are you showing up for yourself? Because I know for each of you watching this that there are people that are expecting you to show up for them. But what about you? If you don't show up for you first, your ability to show up for everyone else diminishes. So, making that list of excuses of whatever it is that we're using, like for me, my time, and then speaking truth into those excuses. My truth behind not having time is that I am expecting myself to do a full 1-hour workout. And right now, I do not have time for that. So I need to scale what I am expecting myself to do. There is power in scaling things back. There is power in having your goal until it feels palatable. So if 10 minutes doesn't feel digestible, what about 5? If 5 doesn't feel good, what about 2.5? Give me something. Because it's a step closer to 30 than you were yesterday. For water, if you're not getting to half your body weight in ounces and you're just throwing in the towel because you're not just hitting that number, what does feel palatable? If you should be getting in 90 ounces, but you're comfortable in challenging yourself to 60, start there. Because if you were only getting in 20 before, that's a huge improvement. Is it the ideal? Maybe not, but it's 3 times the amount you were getting in before. So I love that Meg's drinking your water. Good job, girl. Every step you take toward that ideal is a step in the right direction. But don't get in the game of shoulding your pants. Like, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And then you end up getting so stuck in shoulding yourself that you can't get out of your own should. Stop shoulding yourself and start giving yourself realistic goals. So look at the ideals for the big 5. So what are the ideals? Water, half your body weight in ounces a day. So that's your ideal, but what's your reality right now? What are you actually willing to commit to? That's going to take away your excuses. So this is the exercise we're going to work on tonight. We're going to identify your excuses. We're going to apply those to the big five, and you're going to come up with an action plan of how you're going to tackle this moving forward. So water, half your body weight in ounces, that is the ideal. What are you willing to commit to? Sleep, minimum of 7 hours a night. But if you know that 7 is not your reality right now because you cannot for some reason. Like I have a 4-month-old, 7 hours of sleep a night. I'm stretching things to ask for that right now. I'm getting there. But if I know that 6 is a really good place for me to set a goal, great. That's better than how I was showing up before. Vegetables. The goal is a minimum of 6 fist-sized portions. But if you were eating 1 or 2 before we started this accountability challenge, and you're willing to commit to getting 3 or 4 a day for these 30 days, friend, you are winning the game. And you're doing better than you were doing before. And you are 1 step closer to hitting that ideal. Movement and self-care, same things apply. 30 minutes of movement, and movement can look like anything from a walk outside to a gym workout to a dance party in your kitchen. And self-care being anything that recharges your battery, anything that fills up your cup. What is that going to look like for you in order to get you to show up for it right now, today? I don't want you to think about what is it going to take for me to show up and be perfect. I want you to be thinking about what is it going to take for me to show up and be better right now. I talked about this in the live. There's this Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is right now. We have to start taking action if we want to get to where we want to get to. And your excuses are only going to keep you stuck and spinning your wheels. From it's too hard to I don't have time to there's too much going on in my life to I failed before to it takes too long to I don't know how. I mean, again, a lot of these excuses might feel very real to you. But recognizing that they're excuses requires you to do one big thing, like really big thing, is detach the emotional superglue that you have to your behaviors. Because the guilt, the shame, and the judgment that you have surrounding the behaviors that you're trying to change is going to be the biggest reason why you're going to stay stuck in them. So as you observe, I want you to think about, as you observe these excuses and these behaviors that we're working to change, I want you to think about this can of LaCroix as your habits. I want you to start observing your habits from this viewpoint of being the observer, versus wearing them like a dunce cap. Because oftentimes that's what we end up doing. We wear our habits and our shortcomings like a dunce cap. Instead of just taking a peek, like, oh, I'm doing that thing, that habit. I'm doing that thing again. I need to shift that. So having that observatory role in your habits versus I'm such a failure. This is always going to happen to me. Well, whatever you speak life into is going to be your reality. So if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are correct. But when we learn to detach that emotional superglue and take away the judgment, the shame, and the guilt that surrounds our habits, and rather observe them, they become much easier to shift, much easier to change. It lifts the pressure and makes things feel a lot more doable when we take that observer role versus one of judgment. So the last step, though, and I think that one of the biggest things that we all need to be practicing in this process of reframing and reevaluating and kind of reassigning truth to these limiting beliefs and excuses that we have, it's finding evidence to support whatever that limiting belief is that you're trying to overcome. And the way that we do that is by speaking life into how it is that we do want to show up. Because again, what our ears receive, we start to look for evidence of in our environment. So the biggest thing I want to challenge you with as you identify your excuses and your limiting beliefs, you reframe those excuses and limiting beliefs into truths. And then you look for evidence in your environment to back that up by speaking into those qualities daily in the form of a mantra or an affirmation. So if your limiting beliefs are, I don't have time, I've done this before and failed, I am going to have a really hard time with this and I don't think I'm capable, turning those lies or excuses into truths and then eventually, essentially into this affirmation could look something like this. I have more than enough time than I need to get active every day in a way that nourishes my body, brings me into balance, and allows me to harness my best health. And that simple shift in speaking that out every day, and call me woo-woo, I don't care, it's brain science. Speak it out every day. Put a Post-it note on your mirror in your bathroom that has your affirmation written on it. If you have a journal, make it the cover. Every single day, speak it out. Write it down. There is power in both. I have a tool that I like to use called the 5-minute journal. I've spoken about this before in the coaching group. You can get these on Amazon. In the 5-minute journal, there is a spot every day for my daily affirmation. And it changes based on where I'm at and what season I'm in. But it literally is a 5-minute entry. And it allows me to every day show up for myself and start out with that mantra so that I can set the tone for my day. Because that's what that does. It sets the tone for your day. What your ears receives, your brain believes, and you start to look for evidence of it in your environment. So this is what I want you to work on. What are your excuses? What are the truths of those excuses? And then taking those truths and turning them into an affirmation that you are willing to show up for every day. So make it a sentence, make it a couple sentences, make it a paragraph. That's up to you. There is no right way to do it. There is no wrong way to do it. The key is doing it, showing up for it. So, what does that affirmation look like for you? The affirmation that I just spoke out, that's pretty much what my affirmation sounds like every day. So I'm going to challenge you guys to write your own and make it a point over these 30 days to make that, and it will count as your self-care. So if you make it a point to do your affirmation, you also knocked out one of your big five. So write out the affirmation, start knocking that out daily. And if you want to speak it out more than just in the morning, don't feel like you have a limit on how many times a day you can affirm yourself. That is limitless. So I want you guys to remember that at the end of the day, it is a choice of how you show up. It is a choice to overcome your excuses. It is a choice to take your limiting beliefs and to start looking for the gray space and to start seeking out, how am I applying this black or white thought process to my habits? How could I move myself more into a gray space? You know, it's that difference of treating your habits like an on-off switch versus a dimmer knob. So overcoming your excuses will allow you to step into that space of being able to dim the lights versus completely shutting them off. So I hope that you found tonight to be impactful in a way that helps you step outside of yourself a little bit and assume that observer role, extract the judgment, shame, and guilt from your habits, and instead look at this 30 days like an opportunity to start overcoming some of your patterns and your habits and reframing them into a whole new way of living your life. So I hope that I will see you again next week. Next week, we will be at 7:30 Central Standard Time. So just 30 minutes later, just for this week, or just for that week. And as always, it is a pleasure to be with you here coaching. Make sure that you're checking in the Facebook group and the group portal. And if you ever have questions, concerns, or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, Sarah at functionaleffect.com. Keep living your best life, and I will see you all next time. Good night.